Hi, my name is Oscar Decotelli. I'm the CEO and founder of DXA Invest. Thank you very much for having me at this amazing event. Hopefully next year I'll be able to be there in person, but this time around I'm sending this short video for you to hear what we've been up to here in Latin America. I'm going to open up with a short video so that you get a little bit of an idea of what we are about. Well, I think now you have a little bit of a better idea of what we do, but I'm going to walk you through about what's actually happening here in Latin America. Our firm, we are based in predominantly in Brazil. Most of our team is in Brazil. I'm based out of Rio. That's where our headquarters is. And we've been breathing and living and really being kind of born and raised here in the region. And we can kind of bring opportunities and investments being on the ground here, really kind of living here and be people that are experts here in this part of the world. So what's actually our goal here? So we are the first fintech investment manager focus on private. So focus on private investments. So we believe a lot in direct investments. We believe in having a local execution team, having the ability of democratizing the access for investors around the world, and having a fintech platform to bring transparency, right? And when you look in terms of a quick snapshot on us, we have about $200 million under management. We've been around for about 10 years. We have about 50 people on our team, and about 90% of our assets comes from international investors that use us and believe that we're the best eyes and ears for them in Latin America. But what's actually happening here in Latin America in these last years? I think it's very important to understand that Latin America has a very important piece of the world. A piece of the world, first of all, in terms of number of people that live here. We're talking about 650 million people that live across Latin America. So a very relevant part of the world, about 8% of the world's population. And in terms of GDP, given the currency fluctuations, it will fluctuate between 5 to 7% of the world's GDP is in Latin America. However, most people as investors, they don't have any allocation to Latin America because historically, Latin America was seen a place of poverty, of political instability, of a lot of social discrepancies, and most of the biggest investors would look into the region simply with more of like a speculative type of approach. We believe that technology along the last 10 years have come to prove that because there are such challenges here, you're able to invest in amazing companies. I always like to give the example of Uber. Uber is present basically almost in all the cities around the world, all the major cities around the world. And the three largest cities in terms of number of rides for Uber are in Latin America. We're talking about Mexico City, Sao Paulo in Brazil, and Rio in Brazil. So it's because there's not a lot of security or people don't want to own cars. They tend to use Uber a lot more or any kind of other ride-sharing type of app. It's a young population. We're talking about an average population that ranges from 35 to 40 years old. That's a very much focused on getting a big participation into new technologies. So they are very much involved into all social media. So this drives into this big mass of people that are just dying to have solution of their day-to-day problems. And it's very interesting to see, even in regions and areas where the government is not very strong, you have companies providing, private companies providing opportunities and providing solutions that they are basically taking ahead of what the government should be doing. So, in essence, that has changed dramatically the mentality when you look in terms of Latin America, that the problems were first reasons for you not to invest in. Now the problems are actually a big opportunity to participate in. So what's happening here is that this digital transformation that the region is going through, it's been not at all driven by macro. Here on the left-hand side, you can see an index that's done by a Latin America-based company that does the digital transformation index, where basically it takes a hold private and public companies that are tech-driven and what's their percentage versus the total GDP. So in essence, it shows that the participation of tech-enabled companies is becoming more and more important and relevant into the economies. So when we see this chart here on the left side, in the past 10 years, you saw this green line growing in a very strong pace, while the black line shows the GDP of the region has gone down. So it's been, a lot of people say, a lost decade, because basically you have the same levels of GDP of more than 10 years ago. However, on the technology side, there hasn't been the story. So when we see, for instance, on the right-hand side, Brazil and Latin America compared to the rest of the world, even though it has grown a lot, that participation these last 10 years is still very, very much away from what are some of the other examples around the world. So for instance, in India, if you were just to compare Brazil and Latin America to India, you're still talking about a 3 to 5 times fold on what should be that percentage. Or if it copes up with China, for instance, it's 30% type of participation, or in the US, 70%. So the region is still very much shy in terms of the size of these tech-enabled companies here. And what's actually going on in Latin America is very similar process that we saw in the United States, for instance. This is an example of what happened in a timeline of 15 years between 2001 and 2016, where in 2001, you had basically the majority of the top market cap companies were driven by very much asset-heavy companies. You have guys like GE, ExxonMobil, or even the financials like Citigroup were the largest market cap. Post 15 years after that, you see basically only tech-enabled companies are the largest market cap. So this movement that happened in the United States, it's happening actually across the whole world. Yes, this is a global trend. And Latin America is actually going through that specific phase right now. So just to give you one example, there's a company called Nubank. Nubank is a digital bank that has more than 55 million users nowadays, just to give you an idea. And that grew in 4 or 5 years, that it grew from that level of users. And when it IPO'd last year, at the end of last year, it was already the largest bank in the whole Latin America by market cap. So this is an example of a region, of an area, of a sector in financials that we saw already a big case happening. And that has sparked the interest and the view of very large global investors. So just Nubank, for instance, let's use Nubank as the example here, where we see, for instance, here, the type of investors that came on board from guys like Founders Fund, QED, Tencent, you had Sequoia coming on board, and even in the prior GIC, for instance, and even in the prior to IPO round, Series G too, right, was Warren Buffett's firm coming with about $750 million into the company. This was just 6 months before the IPO. So Nubank was a great example of a company that came disrupting a sector that you would think, oh my gosh, financials, this so concentrated market in the region, 5 banks concentrate 95% of the deposit. There's not a lot of space to go there. However, there's a huge number of people that are unbanked, that don't have access to bank accounts, or they are poorly served into the traditional banks. So that opened a space for somebody like a Nubank to thrive in this region and in this area. And I believe it's a great example of how traditional sectors are being kind of transformed. So when we see this, we see the number of different funds being involved, and we have an analysis here. This is a study done by Lavka and Crunchbase, among others, that shows the amount of funds, they're not based in Latin America, they are investing here. And when you see in terms of the names here, I'll just take Brazil here as an example. Names like Andreessen Horowitz, Founders Fund, Goldman Sachs, Insight Partners, Sequoia, Blackstone, all sorts of different, very large financial savvy type of investors that have seen this sector transformation, this region transformation, as I mentioned. So what we started to see on this aspect was, first, a opportunity that's not a short-term 1, 2, 3 years. This is a 10, 15-year type of opportunity coming from a low base. And then all of a sudden, the bigger funds started to involve. And then we started to see this kind of a result. So when you see the amount of capital that went into Latin America in these last years, 2001 marked a new beginning, a new phase where Latin America starts to be, and in a relevant standpoint, into funds and global investors' portfolios. The jump we saw on capital being invested from 2020 to 2021, we had $19 billion. 2022 is still a very strong year here. It's, of course, being affected by this kind of more of a macro and stock exchange down and all of that being affected. However, we're still seeing levels that are projected between 15 to $20 billion that's going to be invested here. So what we believe is that this trend is the beginning of the trend of Latin America becoming relevant on people's portfolios. And then our view here is a very strong view about the evolution of private markets. So DXA, being a fintech investment manager specialized in privates, we started to see that investors globally, they wanted to have a sense of pertaining to a specific investment, not just investing through funds, because the industry is quite traditional. So how can you participate into this? The first angle is here on the left side, is investing through traditional private equity venture capital funds, right? But you have the traditional fee structure, normally very long commitments. You can't really have a transparency to what you're investing in or into personalization. So what we started to see was a lot of big investors, families, investing by yourself, either through online platforms, choosing a deal on a crowdfunding platform that's a platform that's paid by the companies that are raising capital, or through club deals. Oh, I met this person who's bringing me this deal and that deal. Normally, we're talking about investments that don't have a local execution team. They are simply transactions. and the individuals that bring these opportunities to investors, they're normally paid by these companies. And we saw that the evolution of our market is an evolution of a conflict-free type of approach. So that's what the XA does. We gave the flexibility of the deal by deal to these investors, but we bring the traditional and asset management. So in essence, we're investing our own capital as our investors' capital, and then we create this kind of a fintech platform that allows to have full transparency into what we are up to. And one interesting thing to understand is, where's the world investing? So when we look in terms, this is a study done by UBS that shows where the families are investing globally their capital. And still you have about 59, 60% invested in traditional assets, but that piece of alternative investments is becoming more and more private equity and venture capital driven. However, when we look in terms of that allocation itself, direct investments became the number one exposure, no longer funds. This is the inventory, how much money is currently invested in. So because in the past we only had funds and very little direct investments, now direct investments has surpassed the amount of capital being invested into funds. It's very clear to say that the biggest allocation recently have been towards direct investments. So in essence, what we were able to have is a path here in our firm. We started catering to very large billionaires, very large companies. Our first investment were like a $50 million check. And at the end of 2020, we turned into a fintech, and basically our number of investors multiplied by 20 in the first 10 months of our operations as a tech platform. Last year, we brought on board a partner who owns 20% of our firms, this group called Traders Club. They're a listed firm. They're part of an ecosystem that has the largest community driven for investments in stocks, but also has the largest crypto exchange, more than 3 million users there. And we are the arm for looking at private investments, at private equity and venture capital. And in essence, what we've been able to do is create a transparency around the process of investing into private. So individuals, we've been able to democratize the access to private markets, to wealth managers. We partner up with other wealth managers that want to be able to build these portfolios for their clients, or allow their clients to look at deals that we are investing in. But investors have full transparency to our research, right? We have partnerships with fund managers that are around the world that don't have a local team in LATAM and want to have this local team in LATAM, and even institutional investors that can have their own separate managed accounts with a investment committee built by us to help them navigate here in the region. The private markets around the world is going through a big evolution. And this evolution is very much driven towards customization and access. So the more democratized access and making sure that you're customizing the portfolio or these assets for each person. Maybe it's a restriction that you already heavily invested into a specific sector. Maybe something that you want to pertain, that you want to have a sense that you are investing. I'll give an example. For instance, I want to back women founders. I want to back Black founders. I want to invest into companies that are sustainable, focused on their core business. And this is only driven by this evolution of the private markets to allow people to look on a deal-by-deal selection. And of course, this whole process of facilitating the online closing, either through tokenization or just simply kind of a digital contract. In our case here, we have all of our vehicles international. They are blockchain registered, and that allows investors from around the globe to invest with us without leaving their homes. So we are able to be part of this evolution. There are a lot of different other players that are doing this also, and we believe that it's very important to understand the core aspects of where this industry is going. And you have all these $1 billion plus, all these unicorns, right? As an example here, I brought 3 different unicorns here: Moonfair, Angels List, Our Crowd, for instance. They're all worth more than $1 billion. And they're focused either on giving you access to big funds with a low check, in the case of Moonfair, or being an infrastructure provider for all sorts of different SPVs like Angels List does, or even being a digital manager, as Our Crowd is focused in Israeli startups. We are very similar to Our Crowd, but focused into Latin America. We're the only one that has a local execution team in LATAM here present. And that allows for investors to have gone through different phases. The first phase is to be able to do a personal digital portfolio. This is what we call the digital separate managed account. Then phase 2, we started to allow advisors and wealth managers and partners in general to build portfolios for their clients. They want to do a sub-selection for a specific thematic out of the deals that we're doing. Then phase 3, we started this whole manage as a service process where now other funds, everybody can use our regulation to help their clients to access opportunities here in the region. And then phase 4 definitely is this whole mentality of Web3, of allowing people to have ownership either through tokenization, and that allows the whole changes in terms of secondaries also between hands. So, and then we believe that we need to be a hub for the world to look into Latin America on a deal by deal basis. And we could never do this by ourselves. We needed to be a hub, open hub, to bring in other managers. So we started to do partnerships with other managers looking into the region. Just to give an example, specialized in fintech like Parallax, or health with Yaya, crypto, agriculture, IoT, all sorts of different managers that are leading the way in certain aspects. We analyze their deals, we co-invest, we put our own money together into that deals, and our investors, they get to pick and choose out of the deals that we are doing that fits better their profile. And their profile goes through an analysis of their risk mentality, and that goes through what we call the alpha clients, where we do an analysis of what are your goals, what do you want to do, where do you want to go with this portfolio, and investors can have different tracks. Investor A can have a track focused on diversification and return in general, where it can be real estate, it can be venture capital, it can be real economy, private equity. Or an investor B can simply choose, I just want technology focus. And then it's going to be a diversification around technology, IoT, fintech, agri-tech, and others. So in essence, what happens is that we're doing this flexibility of looking at all these different deals in the region. We're looking a lot into agriculture. We're looking at renewable energy. We're looking at consumer-driven type of opportunities. But then it can be a company that's building their kind of corporate VC type of selection. It can be a family office selecting for their owner, or even can be an advisor who's selecting for their clients. So in essence, when we see this profile of being able to be a manager as a service, we see a lot that the world's going through this ability of being a personalized type of approach to portfolios. But we continue to be the only platform with the post-deal type of transparency, where we actually even look through on what are the revenues of that company on a monthly basis, what are some of the other KPIs that we set up. And we have created like our internal, like a Netflix type, where we show through videos every month what's going on with that portfolio. So every month you get to see what's going on with that specific company that you invested in. And we believe that that kind of transparency is something groundbreaking in the industry. We're one of the first to allow this kind of a transparency, and especially when we're talking about investors around the globe looking into the region, for you to be able to come in and simply pick up your phone and see what's going on with that investment is something that's quite new and quite groundbreaking in the industry globally. So our team We are about 50 people. We're a very diverse team, diverse in gender, diverse in ages, in races, because we believe that that kind of diversity is what really kind of brings it this different mindset and different thought process to find these best opportunities here. So if I can finish up by basically bringing you back to the concept that LATAM is a destination of capital for a lot of big players, but this is still the beginning. Still the beginning of looking to this region for a uncorrelated returns to your portfolio to understand where the connections are going. We see a lot of possibilities between creating a global community looking at the region. There are companies that are based out of Latin America that can export products globally. So the best people to help us are investors who are putting their investment together with us. Everybody's kind of profiting with this whole process. And then we can create a closer world where in Asia there's someone that's investing with us, but it's also opening up doors for some of these companies that we've been investing in. So I'd like to thank you for your time and the opportunity to be talking to you today. Talk a little bit more about evolution of the private markets, democratization, and also about what's going on here in Latin America from the ground up. What's going on? We welcome any of the investors that come to the region here that want to see us, want to meet us. Please feel free to reach out either on LinkedIn or through our website. We are always open to talk a little bit more about what these amazing opportunities are happening here in the region. And this is just the beginning. Thank you very much and have a great day.